to episode 2 of Finding Our Family, where we get to know Lady Elizabeth Kellaway a little bit more. When I started researching our family bloodlines, I easily fell into following the male lines back as far as records allowed. This was nice and tidy, as it gave single clear connections from the earliest bloke to the most recent. So it was a shock, as a feminist, when I realized I had hundreds of names of women attached to these blokes with untold stories. That clearly would not do. It was a lesson for me in how the convenience of managing property and inheritance rights through the male line renders women invisible in history. In episode 1, we briefly met Lady Elizabeth Frances Kellaway, wife to Sir John Richard Thomas Plampin III. Her life was short, dying, we think, in childbirth at 35 years old. But what was her backstory? I had always assumed our connections to the Sidmouth area of Devon was only through my mother's father, Sidney Dunn, and his ancestors. To my surprise, Lady Elizabeth was born at Stowford Manor, Ivybridge Road, on the outskirts of Sidmouth. The Kellaways came over to England from France in Norman times, just as the Plampins did, around 1066. Back then they were known as the de Kellaways, from their French village of origin. Over time, this name was anglicised to Kellaway. Records show the Kellaways were associated with Stowford Manor land as far back as 1200. At that time, surnames became associated with place. Records at that time list the family as the Stowfords, now Stowford, while also referencing Kellaway. Kellaway Manor was built in the 1300s, with a small private chapel dedicated to St. Nicholas added in 1400. We found records of Lady Elizabeth's grandfather, Philip Kellaway, born in the manor house in 1462. He married Alice Yeo, a Devon girl from Barnstaple, producing our 12th great-grandfather, John Kellaway, in 1494. John would later father Lady Elizabeth, with his wife, Lady Jane Tregarthen, but more about her later. You can still visit Stowford Manor, now a Grade II listed building, although it has much changed from when Lady Elizabeth was born there. It was partly rebuilt in the 1500s and remodelled in the 1700s. The chapel is now a 6-bedroomed holiday house after it was sold in 2010. The house that was the major section of the former manor house was divided, at sale, into 5 separate residential dwellings. These subdivisions were very common endings for stately homes in England from 1970 onwards, when the cost of maintaining 700-year-old properties became just too expensive for single families. Lady Elizabeth's maternal line also delivered some surprises. Her mother, Lady Jane Tregarthen, was married to our 12th great-granddad, Sir John Kellaway. But she'd been married before. Her first husband was Sir John Wadham of Merrifield, Somerset. John was a member of Parliament for 4 years, between 1514 and 1518. Elizabeth and John's marriage produced several children, with one of particular note. Their son, Nicholas Wadham, went on to found Wadham College at Oxford University. This suggests he was an influential and wealthy man. Wadham College still exists today. It prides itself on its academic excellence, inclusiveness, and progressive community. Lady Jane's maiden surname, Tregarthen, is intriguing. Although Lady Joan and her father, John Tregarthen, were born in Branscombe, Devon, her father was buried in Cornwall, suggesting a heart connection to this ancient Celtic land. It was a further surprise to learn that Lady Joan's mother, our 13th great-grandmother, came from an ancient Cornish family, the Trethyrths of Treturgy. Trethyrth was listed as a settlement in the Domesday Book. In this book, in 1086, Trethurth was listed as having 2 households, 2 ploughlands, 40 acres of pasture, 4 acres of woodland. Its value at the time was 5 shillings, an absolute fortune in today's currency. There is a coat of arms associated with Trethurgy Manor and the Trethurths. Today, sadly, only remnants remain of the manor. Trethurgy was a sleepy Cornish village until the Eden Project was established there in 2001, under a mile away. The Eden Project, located in a reclaimed clay pit, showcases all the distinct geographic regions of the world, showing each ecosystem in domes and open gardens. Residents of Trethurgy now complain that their village has become a rat run to the Eco Project, on a road that is exactly the same as it was 40 years ago. It was a joy to find this extensive Cornish line. It helped me place my strong alignment with Celtic thinking, that we are one with nature, and that all parts of the natural world is sacred and imbued with meaning and life force. I was completely unaware we had Cornish ancestors until now. There is one more interesting snippet in this story. It brings us back to where we started this episode with Lady Elizabeth Frances Kellaway, who married our 11th great-grandfather Sir John Richard Thomas III in 1550. Both of Elizabeth's parents, our 12th great-grandparents, were buried in St. Winifred's Church in Branscombe, Devon. St. Winifred's is one of the oldest churches in Devon, with its roots in the 10th century, but its greatest interest lies in its placement on the land. While most churches were built on higher slopes to be visible to parishioners, St. Winifred's is nestled on a terrace out of sight from the sea. This cleverly kept it hidden from the Viking raiders sailing down the coast at the time, who were looking to ransack church wealth and challenge Christianity with their pagan beliefs. St. Winifred would have held many riches. It was owned by the monks of Exeter Cathedral. St. Winifred's houses a very rare 3-decked pulpit. On the lowest pulpit, the lesson was read. On the next level, prayers were said, and from the top pulpit the sermon was delivered. It is lovely to think of our 11th great-grandparents resting in this quiet, secluded place, forever protected from the sea. Delving into the Plampin wives' family unearthed such interesting stories. These would have remained buried in time if only the male line was researched. How many women's stories have been lost to history from the convention of patriarchal lineage?